says it's live.
Yep.
Yeah, you ready?
Should be live.
Yeah, normally is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. Happy?
Yep.
Very good. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our finance meeting of Tuesday the 19th of, sorry, whatever date it is. I've lost, tell you what date it is. Tuesday the 19th. February. Usual caveat, obviously, with recording and live streaming this meeting. Right. Apologies for absence, please. Only none.
None, all here.
Gang's all here. Declarations of interest, beginning interest, anybody?
None received.
Unreceived, nobody shouting. This is the last meeting held on the 20th of October.
Do you want me to show those?
It's up to you. I assume everyone's got them.
Yeah.
Read them. Propose. David, any seconder at all? Councillor Hanlon, thank you. All those in favour, please show. Lovely, thank you very much. Actions arising from those minutes. Nothing on page 13. I assume we still haven't done the booking.
No, we can't do much until we actually get to the point where we can open. Obviously, it was updated. We began to update it for the potential reopening, but it's all stopped again.
One thing I would, and I did suggest it ages ago to Mary, I haven't seen her for months now, of course, was it'd be nice to maybe get the booking form as an online entry form on our website somehow. And I'm looking at Alicia, but she's not looking at me, so.
Yeah, I think we just have, we would have to agree prices, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Item, sorry, what number is this? 2021 item C, the cleaning contract specification.
The group hasn't met.
No, okay. And Panto cost analysis. Well, we haven't any Pantos. Can't really classify the one we had in December as right, public forum. Anybody, Colin?
There's nobody here.
Yeah. Right, straight on to the responsible financial officer report. Town council budget.
Did you want me to share that?
Yes, please. If you wrote the, well, you and Martin wrote the report.
Okay, that should be appearing on a screen near you.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, I think there's no huge surprises here, but if this sort of thing excites you, it's a 9 months, so we're 3/4 in, so it's a fairly easy calculation to work out how the whole year might finish. So we quite like month 9 in that respect. So we're looking at 164,000 variance. And I still haven't worked out quite how to describe it, because clearly the story behind it is not a good story. But if you want some form of thin silver lining on this particular COVID cloud, is that we do have the funding to put into reserves, which will help underwrite next year, and indeed underwrite the year after, and some particular projects we might want to do. But we'll talk about that in the budget briefing. But that's where we are, and this is kind of the impact of not delivering services.
I suppose what it does do, though, it puts into context how much we actually spend on doing community stuff.
Yeah.
The fact that we haven't been able to do it just shows what we do put into helping the town's arts and leisure and well-being.
Yeah, and we have delivered a few things, but you're right. I mean, it also, I suppose, in the flip side of that, is also demonstrates there's a latent cost to a council, even if it doesn't necessarily do as much overtly as you might have normally expected to do. You know, buildings still cost a lot of money to run.
Yep.
I mean, we've spent 207,000 on the Arts Centre. It's quite amazing figures, really, when you think about it. When it's only been open in this financial year about 10 days.
But what it has done with it being shut is give us the time to be able to get in and do some of the jobs that we wouldn't necessarily have been able to do when it's running full tilt.
Yeah, it has given us the time to do that, certainly.
Yeah, it's not as much as I'd like to have seen, but anyway, that's not matter. Anybody else on that page? I can't see anybody questioning. Next page, Colin.
Okay, then the bank reconciliations. I suppose that the real key thing there is that we're calling down another 150,000 before the end of February to cover expenditure going into April. The Lloyd Treasury, I'll give myself an action point, Alicia. I just want to do a little graph. I want to just see how that has been holding up over the last few years. It should be dwindling. I just want to check that the rate of dwindling is okay. Obviously, this is where funds are held, which we don't. We do expect to spend some of it, but some of the other money may or may not be spent, depending if things come to fruition. So, for the splash park, we'll take a big lump out of this. But I was interested I'm pretty sure that we're finishing this financial year with less money in there than we had in the previous financial year. It's just a reminder as we run these figures down, because we're spending on the youth activities reserve, particularly, the day we'll need to draw down some cash from the CCLA will loom closer. And obviously that's a property fund, which hasn't done particularly well this year. It's generating good income, but its capital value is struggling. So we wouldn't want to crystallise some of the losses there sooner than necessary. I think we've got an extremely wide band that we don't need to worry about anything at the moment, but it will be interesting to just draw a diagram and just get an idea of the angle at which things are going down. So we can say perhaps in 2 or 3 years that we might find that the zigzag of cash flow might just begin to get a little bit scary. But I think we're a few years away from that.
Colin, I think I've got a table somewhere on that Lloyd's Treasury account that probably just needs a little bit of updating. So I think I've got most of the data you'd probably need for that graph.
Excellent. That'd be really useful. Thank you.
So if I can update that tomorrow.
Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Hanlon.
I think really what we've got to do is think seriously of how we can get income on our money, because looking at it short term and sort of semi long term, what Colin's just said is a bit worrying. I'm just thinking that we've got to have some sort of other income coming in with our money that we've got. I'm thinking of sort of rental income or something like that. Having some sort of income other than look at the interest. And it looks like it's going to stay like that for years. So we've got to think other ways of getting money from that, really. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like West Suffolk, where I've pointed them towards the CCLA. I know what Colin's saying about property, but we have been in an unusual year this year. I think if you invest in retail property, you're probably on a hiding for nothing, but there is, other thing. I don't know what the CCLA actually invested as a. I can't remember what they invested rather as a
So
percentage.
industrial and office and retail.
Yeah, that's right. So I can't remember the percentage. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I agree with that. It's going to be interesting to see, what happens with interest rates post-COVID, and well, just generally our country's finances anyway. So
But even what the West Suffolk District Council have got, they've got shops and things like that. Even that is not going very well, is it? Because the people are not sort of shopping, and all these places are sort of closing down because of the rent that they. We've got to look at other sort of ways of doing it. Rental income. At least that's an income, isn't it? Or something else, really. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think unless you're in residential property, I don't think you're going to get very much rate of return unless you invest money for a long, long time somewhere. I mean, I think we're all struggling, from investments and everything else. Certainly my investments have, they're a fraction of what they used to be. Okay, just to let you know on the bank reconciliation, just to confirm, I checked those yesterday from Martin, about to say faxed over, emailed me the bank statements and things.
Okay, thank you. A little bit on debtors and creditors. Obviously, the figures are all fairly low. In fact, it's mostly us. So there's only one party over 90 days, apart from the Town Council and Heart Seats and the Community Trust, which is £250, and we'll talk about that. And it's much the same the other way around, because obviously there's no activity.
Yep, I can't see any hands up.
Okay, so Heart Seats. So obviously, in terms of the year to date, it's been absolutely tiny amount of activity.
Can't think why.
And then the zone, obviously, most of this is down to capital costs. And obviously staff.
Excuse me.
And that's discussion. There's something coming up at full council in terms of that.
I know, Colin, I noticed there the 24,500 for cafe purchases. Considering we've been shut for 9 months, and obviously this is since last April. Does that mean we've got a lot of stock sitting covered somewhere? Again,
Martin, that's not.
Well, I've got to the 24,000 is the budgeted figure, isn't it?
Is that really what we've only spent since we've reopened?
We basically that £513 actual expenditure is three Booker invoices purchases that Sandra's made since October.
How have we handled the fact we gave away loads of food?
I have got some work to do in the near future. I've got lots of information both from the Arts Centre and the zone where I actually need to write off some of the stock that's been given away.
Okay.
So that obviously needs to be done before we get to the end of the year. So there will be an additional cost.
Yeah. Okay.
Cost there, because our stock levels at the end of the year will obviously be significantly excuse me, I don't know about significantly, but they will certainly be lower than they were last time around. We've managed on the bar, we managed to get full credit on all of our draft beer. I think that was about £700, I think. So but obviously there's some of the foodstuffs have been written off or given away. So I need to do some work on putting those values through the accounts in the next month or so. Haven't done so yet.
Okay, so apart from over the additional spending, here budget compared to actuals on your cafe equipment, it's all been fairly minor stuff apart from the staffing recharge. But that obviously has stopped in any case after July.
I noticed the reactive maintenance is several 100% more than budget. Is the budget too low?
No, the heating system's too old.
Yeah, I know that as well, but is that the only thing we would react to, the heating? I just wonder if it's too low, the budget, 250.
I think what we've got this year is within the Colin, correct me if I've got this wrong, but within the zone, the reactive maintenance cost has been split equally between the town council element of the zone, the heart seats element, and the community trust. So there's a £1,200. Sorry, I've got this round the wrong way, haven't I?
I think you're right, because if you look at that figure, that's £1,000 split three ways.
So I can. I can't actually give you what the actual. And in fact, I can do. I can come back to you on that because I've got all the papers on my desk. It could be that that £1,200 expenditure actually needs splitting three ways between the three entities and not all sitting in heart seats.
Okay, it's fine. No, if that's the one that sort of, looked at me. Yeah. Okay. I've seen with his hands up, so. Oh, sorry, I cast a hand and sorry, I can see you now.
Yeah, what's on the heating and lighting, Colin? What's the percentage between the heating and the lighting on that figure? You know what I mean? Do you know what's the split?
I couldn't tell you offhand. We'd have to look and see what the oil bill are and the electric bill.
I would say, without being able to give you any precise figures, the lion's share of that will be electricity.
Oh, right.
Because they use, I think it's kerosene for the boiler, I believe.
Oil,
but not regularly the electricity bill for the zone is in the region of sort of £400 a month, and of course that's split three ways between the three entities: the town council, the community trust, and heart seats, and that would be the same for the kerosene as well. But,
can I come back?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, sorry. I'll wait for.
No, go ahead.
And finish. Oh, right. Can I ask two other questions then? What's the cost of heating, and what is the heating in the zone? And when are you thinking of updating the heating in the art centre?
So I couldn't tell you offhand what the cost of the heating in the zone is, but it's very expensive because it's oil, kerosene, whatever. In terms of updating at the zone, we've been talking about doing that already and had a plan potentially that could have been used for the Salix grant, but we have actually put an application in to Salix for funding to replace the heating system in the Arts Centre to become a, I think, air source heat pump to generate heat at a fraction of the cost currently, and also without using carbon-based fuels.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, Colin, next page.
Okay. So that's the bank reconciliation.
Which I've done as well.
And the Community Trust one, there's just a consolidated bit at the end here. So I get there's really nothing much to report there at all, to be perfectly honest.
I suppose the only thing I would mention, based on what Councillor Hannah was just saying, is our electricity bill in the Arts Centre is still very high, considering there's hardly anybody in there. And I think we know the reason for that.
Yeah, well, it seems to be the ventilation. If I can come back up to.
There you are.
Yeah.
It's about £1,000 a month we're spending. On
Yeah, compared to 1,500 a month, we may have expected to, or 2,000 a month, we may have expected to spend. So, yeah, it's gone down, but not by a huge amount. And you'll know that Nick mentioned that there is quite a significant base load. Whether we'll see, if we map the monthly payments and see how it goes now that they've done some work on the ventilation system, they've cleaned the vents for the kitchen. But that's, if you go on noise alone, the kitchen seems to be absorbing a huge amount of electricity. And I know that's something that has been addressed already, but we'll need to look at literally just replacing some of the units. If the room overheats, then there is an issue about how we can passively keep the temperature down in that room without having those massive fans going all the time.
But equally, I've also mentioned about the freezers being on, holding food that we really should have thrown away a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's, and Martin's could probably comment better than I could in terms of what the content of those freezers are, although of course we did open fleetingly.
Well, we did did an exercise for Nick back in the autumn where he did a stock take, or got someone to do a stock take on the two freezers, and we valued the stock that was in there about £1,100. Because I think if it would have been a lower value, I think he was going to perhaps propose that the food was disposed of and the freezer switched off. But given that there was £1,100 worth of food in there, I think that idea got quashed.
Okay. Well, when I last looked at them, I didn't think there was that much money in there. It's just the fact they're very heavy duty freezers. They look like they're about 6 or 7 kilowatt freezers. That's why I've been going on about them for a long time. And equally, because they generate heat, that's where the ventilation is a problem as well. Anyway, something we need to look at. Was there any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Smith, sorry, you're very small on my screen, sorry.
Right, I was just going to ask about the Chalkston open space rather.
Yep.
I noticed there was no budget for it, but then there was an expenditure. What was that exactly? The 1,135?
I'm trying to remember the lady's name. I think it was Stephanie Hartick.
Yeah.
She came and did 2 pieces of work. I think she produced some preliminary drawings and sketches for how the open space might look.
Oh, I see. but that wasn't budgeted for originally.
It's it was a piece of art work that Nick arranged to produce a rainbow garden originally. So there will be a transfer, Martin, we need to do because that was actually an arts and leisure project.
Okay.
So we either transfer the expenditure at the Chalkston open space into art and leisure, or we via some funds across from art and leisure, because Councillor Smith is quite right. That project wasn't a Chalkston open space project. It was about doing some artwork in the Chalkston open space.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that? You just want to go back down to the consolidated page, just in case anybody asking questions on that at all. And again, I've done the bank reconciliation.
That little sentence there, which of course refers to you, that's an agenda item next week on full council.
Yeah.
Has been mentioned before and nobody's said anything against it.
Nothing.
Much as on that, and then just a bit on the historic debtors. That local group, Martin.
Yeah, it's a very. You might remember when we looked at the town council debtors as well. There was a £600 debt which was 60 days old. They all relate to the same group, and it's simply an oversight on my part initially, in that I hadn't realised that the Muslim group had gone back to Bevan House. So I invoiced them 4 months all at once when I realised that they had, and they paid very promptly, but for some reason they didn't pay the second of the 4 invoices. So I'm assuming that's an oversight on their part. But I do need to go back to them. And similarly, the £600 debt, which was 60 days old, that's them as well. And again, an oversight on my part. On invoicing them, but they're usually very good, and I'm sure as soon as I remind them, they'll settle all of the invoices. And obviously, it's the only room hire that we're doing at the moment, so it's the only debt we have. Everything else, I think you remember, was cleared at the last finance meeting, including a couple of write-offs that I think councillors approved. We have 1 or 2 people that are in credit, and they're happy to stay in credit until we're able to reopen again. But yeah, this is obviously we've taken advantage of the current situation to get the debtors' ledgers bang up to date, or as bang up to date as they've been for some time.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, any other questions on this agenda item? Councillor Hanlon again.
Yeah, sorry, it's not it's on Bevan House and the Muslim community. It was in the paper that the door was damaged and it was a racist attack. Was there any outcome with that, and is that door been fixed?
In terms of the designation by the police as a racist attack, I did question that of them. The only reason they actually designated it as that is because of the previous incident. This particular incident, they had no evidence that it was anything racist about it at all. In terms of the actual damage, I don't know. It was only a minor damage, I believe, anyway, wasn't it, Colin?
Yeah, it was. My understanding is that it's been sorted, but I'll seek confirmation.
Is that okay, Councillor Hammond? Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, item 8. The big one. I hope you've got your glasses on, or able to zoom in on the PDFs, which is the budget.
Do you want me to start with my budget report, which will not strain the eyes quite so much?
No, that's fine. I mean, I printed it off. But please.
So I mean, obviously it follows the same pattern as previous. The big difference here is this commentary in general. We got an email, I think on the 28th of 29th of December, to say that West Suffolk had approved passing on local council tax support grant. And in our particular case, it's £21,143. This is obviously very welcome news. We are setting a deficit budget in any case because we're drawing on our reserves. So we qualify in that respect. But obviously that does make a difference, and it's been applied really directly to reduce the precept, I'm sure is the intention in any case. Nothing's changed on inflation. The 160,000 I mentioned earlier, I've now actually apportioned that. Now we can be fairly certain it's really going to be there. So that I've got some draft earmark reserves to present to full council in the fullness of time, should March, so that we'll be basically pulling forward from this current financial year underspends by putting them into earmark reserves. So this is particularly going to support the youth reserve, so the zone youth and family hub, and also Karen and Dan's work with people who are trying to get back into work. We've the £38,000 of county council funding was only for 2 years and is ending in March 31st. So we're backfilling that for the 21-22 year with £40,000 of earmarked reserves. So that means that that project can go ahead. There's 200,000, which is not obviously coming out of 160. That's you earmarked, you shifted that across a couple of months back. So that's ready to go for the splash park. I've allocated £50,000 to climate change reserve to simply build that figure right up so that we can get on and tackle climate change. We're expecting to be doing some work in the community, leading the community in climate change, and hopefully that 50,000, for some reason, I don't know what it'll be used for, but will be there in the earmark reserve. It's not in the budget because we haven't budgeted to spend that money, but if we put it into that climate change reserve, then we've got a bit of a war chest to spend on climate change. And also, given that the local council tax support grant is only for 1 year, I've suggested that we put the other 50,000 into an earmark reserve specifically to mitigate the effects of the pandemic on the precept, so that we can budget for that 50,000 coming off the precept, what we would charge council tax for in 22-23, because we don't really know what's going to happen with tax base. We hope it'll recover, but that does make quite a big difference. So just looking at the new numbers, so I had originally said that Band D would need to go up by 20p a week, but thanks to the government and West Suffolk, that comes down to 14p a week, and with the holding the money back from the underspends from this year for a full 12 months to release into 22-23 means we can stabilise things at 10p a week for 22-23 and 23-24 in terms of increases. And obviously those figures are dependent on the tax base, but hopefully those are achievable. So that's the plan. I can also bring up the actual budget figures, but this is the shorthand version.
Anyone got any questions on that at all? The only thing being Mr. Pessimistic as usual, Colin, I'm not convinced about the tax base recovering as quickly as you think it might do.
You may well be right. I mean, you know, it's nobody really knows how it's going to go, but there will be houses being built.
Yeah, but you know,
houses being bought.
Well,
but I agree with you. Who knows?
And we've lost I think it was 600 or 800 houses, if you include the new ones off the thing. Yeah, very. I mean, the only upside slightly, I guess, is those new houses are probably not band B. I suspect they're a bit higher than that.
I have also based the figures. If you look at the net income, that over the next 2 years, 3 years, we don't achieve any increase whatsoever in income. We do expect that there will be some success in the coming 12 months for Karen in terms of finding some funding for that. But at the moment, there's a bit of a feeding frenzy, I think, on the funding available to help people get back into work. And we're a minnow, and there's the West Suffolk colleges and some of the big national the consultancies that are all pals of government that always seem to win every single contract going. They're the ones who will currently be carving out the those funds, but we will get something out of that. I'm quite sure Suffolk County Council will find something, and I had an email from Kirsty at Brentwood this week, who is very much looking for additional funding to help Karen out. So I'm sure that net income figure is very pessimistic as well.
Yeah, it was interesting that the grant working, I think it was last week, if I remember rightly, when we finalised all the West Suffolk grants, that there were John Eaton and the Families Communities were saying there's quite a lot of funding streams out there, which a lot of them I've never even heard of, which he's pointing lots of these groups who may be unsuccessful in their grant funding application. So yeah, I think we need to just get out there and try and find, as Councillor Hanlon says, if we can't get investment income, let's try and get some grants or something if we can.
Yeah,
that's great. Any final questions on the report? Nothing. I can't see anything else.
Do people want to look at the actual budget itself?
You're probably not going to be able to see it very well anyway.
No, I think it's all in the headlines, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's the bottom line figure, isn't it, that everybody focuses on, and that's there.
Yeah, I mean, you and I and Bruce have spoken about this, Colin. Is one of the things I always like to see, going back from a business point of view, is always what did we spend last year? What was our budget last year? So you can do a direct comparison. But it's not enough space on that piece of paper. You want it down to about 2 points or something on the font.
It's here.
Yeah. So I know. So I'm talking about line by line.
Oh, well, yeah. On that main budget sheet,
Yeah.
it is electronically. It's right.
Oh, I know it is. Yeah, I've been in the background, but not. Yeah.
You need a computer screen the width of your house.
Yeah, I know. I don't yet have one of those. Councillor Smith.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to ask. I noticed you obviously looking at the screen at the moment. You've got from reserves this coming year and the following year, and then nothing in the 2023 to 24. Is that because we will get to a state where we have not got enough reserves at that point to do that?
Oh no, not at all. So the out of the 277,000 for the upcoming year, 200,000 of that is a contribution towards the splash park. So you should really read 5,000, 48,600, 77,000, 50,000. So that last year, I just simply haven't budgeted to take any money out of earmark reserves, so that the earmark reserves wouldn't diminish after 2023. But that doesn't mean there isn't earmark reserves. The earmark reserves remain pretty healthy. For the 77,000 that I'm putting in for the next financial year is carry forward from the underspend of this financial year, so that with the exception of some money for the volunteer centre, which was a sinking fund in any case, I'm not budgeting for any reserve to take any hit at all in 21-22, unless there's a scheduled expenditure or an unexpected expenditure that those earmarked reserves are there for in the first place. So in theory, in 23-24, we should have the same reserves as we've got right now for all of the earmarked reserves. But it could be that we need to find some money out of reserves if we find things are tight, and particularly listening to what Mayor Burns was saying, that the potential of the tax base not bouncing back, then we might decide that if that 10p for 2023-24 becomes unsustainable, that we would draw on some of our earmarked reserves in order to protect council taxpayers from the impact of a continually low tax base. We have a very poor tax base anyway. There could well be an argument for West Suffolk or Anglia Revenue to actually look a bit more closely at Haverhill to why our tax base is so low, and making sure that that has been properly audited often enough that we're confident that the people who are receiving benefits and not paying council tax are people who cannot afford it.
Yeah, see what you mean. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Personally, I wouldn't trust ARP's figures as far as I can throw them, based on the total problems we had last year with the grant scheme, trying to finding businesses that are still on their system that hadn't existed for 10 years. So,
well, that's the concern. That is the concern, that we have our tax base compared to our population is remarkably low. And I would just like somebody to remark on it at some point, to actually say to ARP, have you actually updated your numbers? Are you sure that all these households are still not eligible to be paying council tax? If their figures are all out of date, it's nothing to do with the householders. If ARP are out of date, then we could be losing a lot of potential income, and therefore charging council taxpayers more council tax than necessary, simply because of poor record keeping.
Yeah, I have asked those sort of questions, not down to that detail in the past, from people like Rachel Mann. How accurate are those ARP figures? I think there's been lots of complaints over the past 2 or 3 years about various things. So maybe once we get out of this pandemic, is something for them to actually do a proper audit of it. And even if it's just random sampling of particular addresses, who's living there now, who's are they paying tax or not, that sort of thing. The only one thing I had a question on, Colin, because I can't see any other hands up.
Councillor Hanlon has his hand.
Sorry,
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking, don't you think we should do it sooner than later, as far as you know, ask them for the audit. I was just thinking a letter wouldn't hurt really, just to get the ball rolling, because you know how long things, and they won't hurry themselves. Well,
No,
they're so busy that you know, it might take longer than we think to get things done. It's just get the ball rolling really. And also there was another question, I forgot it now, but I was going to ask, but I'll think about it and might come back.
I'll come back if you remember. Yeah, I mean, there may be, I mean, I'm not saying necessarily ARP, remembering they're not part of the council. They're owned by the, you know, partly owned by the council, but they're not council employees there. So it could be that they're not very busy and they're sat on their backsides. I don't know.
I'm happy to write a letter if Alicia could care to make a note of that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to write to. I'll start with ARP and perhaps I'll copy West Suffolk in as well, and just
Copy Rachel Mann.
copy Rachel in and just ask how confident we are about the tax base figures given. Yeah, I just think if you look at the population of Haverhill compared to the population of Bury St Edmunds, and then look at the tax base, I don't think Bury St Edmunds is so full of that bigger houses that explains how come our tax base is so much lower, and it's so much lower than almost, you know, percentage wise. It just seems very low.
Yeah, I did download the. I'm trying to desperately find it. The drops in all the tax base. Oh, here you go. Found it. Is this it? Because it was on. No, that's not it. I thought that was it. There was a document with all the parish and towns showing percentage, and I think we were way up there in terms of drops.
Yeah.
I can't find it at the moment. I can't remember how long ago it was I downloaded it.
Can I come back
Yeah,
to the other question, Chair, please? Yeah, it's they're saying that we won't things won't start going back to normal-ish to after Easter, and maybe longer. I was thinking, would we make, because we didn't spend, was it 100,000, wasn't it, or something last year? Was it 100,000? I can't remember now, but we didn't spend as much as we thought we was going to spend. We've got that sort of quarter, haven't we? We'll have a quarter where we won't spend as much. Will that affect all this figures as far as the 14p and the 10p is concerned?
No, it won't, because we have to set the preset next week. What it will do is make a difference in the reserves for 22-23 and 23-24. So where Councillor Smith was querying the naught for 23-24, what you're describing, you're absolutely right. That potentially is where we may be able to, at the end of the financial year, when we actually put money into earmarked reserves, is be able to put some into 23-24 as well.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I have found the document now. So Haverhill lost 258-ish tax base on a 7,500 tax base for the current year, and Bury lost 141 on a tax base of 13,400.
Yeah.
The other big drop was Newmarket, 168 down, but that's probably down to the horse racing industry, I reckon.
My question is really over, but we have quite a high private rented sector.
Yes.
And to me, that seems to be a very high potential for people who move into private rental and simply neglect to mention to the tax collecting authorities that they are now living in this district.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how many households that perhaps need a nudge just to remind them that they need to make their fair share contribution.
I was told a while back, and I don't think this actually happened. In theory, there is a direct connection that if you phone up the council for something, like to get a brown bin or whatever, is they check to see whether you're registered and all these things. But I don't think that happens.
No.
One question I was going to have.
Well,
Sorry, go.
so I was going to say I'm quite sure it does happen because I have a brown bin from Baber, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't check that. But I don't think we're talking about households that would be buying any other services in. You know, we do know there's issues about the state of private rented accommodation, and quite often that's down to some of the tenants' choices of how they decide to maintain the place. But I think I want to know what the enforcement is to make sure that people who are coming in to live in our community are paying their fair dues. Where, you know, because who actually does the landlord bother mentioning it? Is I think the responsibility is entirely down to the private tenant to actually let people know that they've moved in. But is there any enforcement? Is there anyone actually asking the question of how come nobody's paying tax in these places? Because there'll be a difference between, you can look at a list and say, well, these houses, the people are receiving benefits, so therefore they would not be paying council tax. These houses are not receiving benefits and they are paying council tax. But what about the houses that aren't paying council tax and aren't receiving benefits either? Is anyone actually nailing those ones down to what are otherwise supposedly empty properties, and are they actually empty?
Well, the empty properties list is quite small for West Suffolk, so
Well,
think
Well,
square the circle.
I would argue, David, the ones they know about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one down
Yeah,
the road
exactly.
from me. About a year ago, I reported it had been empty for about 9 months, and they said, "Oh, the landlord is renovating it." What? 9 months, and there's not a sign of anything happening in there. What have you done to enforce it? And it took about another 3 months before they finally tracked down the landlord, who said, "Oh, I'm just sitting on it."
Yeah, because they did change the rules this year to only give a small period of grace. Whereas before, I think they could have a year, couldn't they? It's gone down.
Yeah, no, that's right. Now it's only it's a very short period of time.
So I
Okay,
suspect
Colin, look,
not doing the work.
no, okay.
ARP.
I'll leave you to write a letter then. To do that. One thing I was question I was going to ask, because obviously I don't have previous years' individual figures. Where you got the expenditure from 1.4 to 1.8 million for this year to next year, I know some of that's the splash park pad rather, and obviously there's also a net income planned, obviously because hopefully we'll get back to some sort of normality. Do you know roughly where the other 200,000 expenditure is? That all what you were saying earlier on about the like the Karen and can't all be that, is that?
no, that was there anyway. So 200,000 straight is the expenditure on the splash park. So we're looking at a difference of 240,000. So there's let's have a look what's going on.
I mean, I know you talk about 2% income in uplift and all this sort of stuff. I understand that.
Yeah, and I guess we've then got changes in terms of staffing. Community kitchen is in there. There's various bits and bobs that will push it together and up. We could analyse the figures and look at where exactly the increases are.
I was just interested in was there anything single line item perhaps which was just.
Well, I suppose the biggest line item is likely to be the fact that the heart seats isn't in the figures, so the expenditure and income that would have gone through heart seats and back again isn't going to be there. It's been, I have to say, it's been when you take heart seats out, because of the interrelationship between the two, the figures go completely nuts, and you wonder what you press, to be perfectly honest, and you have to go backwards and forwards a few times just try and see what difference it makes. But what I've tried to do is drag the heart seats expenditure into the zone and into the art centre. And that's probably what's done most of this, because originally you would have only seen in these figures the net difference, because everything that Heartsease did of income and expenditure netted off. The rest was paid for by the council.
Yeah.
And that was in the figures. So that's gone out. It's not quite as straightforward as that.
No, that's fine.
But yeah, I mean, you'll see for the preset figures, the actual preset document that's signed, the art centre looks like it's suddenly gone through the roof. But it's simply because the figures are being apportioned more directly. And it comes off again. You'll see it goes down in 22-23 because there's the 200,000 comes back off.
Right. Yeah. I understood that bit. It was just I didn't know if you.
No, so you got the Heartsease hiccup, I suppose you could call it.
Yeah.
In 21-22, you've only got small increases in 22-23 and 23-24. With like 40,000 and well, about the same again, 30,000, because shifting everything from Heartsease into full council is done once.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's just I didn't know when during your analysis when you were putting figures in whether you just noticed, I must put a load of money in for that. But I don't think there's anything big project wise other than the splash pad.
No, there's been money. We talk about money going to reserves, but not money actually going to expenditure.
No, that's fine. Councillor Hanlon?
Chair, just to get back on the tax base very quickly, electoral register is around about 93 to 95%, and I just wonder if there's any way that the council can marry up the electoral register with the tax base, or whether is it too much hard work to do it that way? Because if you look at the 93 to 98% of electoral register, then they know them sort of people, and I just perhaps it's to see whether they should be paying council tax or whatever, or is it too much work?
It won't be necessarily to do with the electoral register, Pat. They'll have a list of every single address, and they will know whether every single address is paying or not. As Colin said, they'll know who's on benefits, so not paying council tax. They know the people who are paying council tax. In theory, they should be able to get a list of those properties that are doing neither.
Go knock on doors.
Yeah, some of them will be empty, obviously, but there may well be. I suspect Colin is right. On the basis we have a high percentage of properties that are rented out, privately rented, where people come and go very quickly.
And they probably are not on the electoral register as a result. I'm sure ARP try all sorts of different ways of tracking it down. I just think we perhaps should actually say to them, "Oi, I think we want to make sure that this is correct," because Haverhill historically, even in times of full employment, has always had a very low tax base compared to the population. So yes, I'm sure if they can use electoral register, they will.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on the budget? You want a proposal on this?
A recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy to recommend.
Yeah. Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Davison, is that seconded? Yeah. Okay. All right, so this is a recommendation to full council next week. All those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous from what I can tell. Great, thank you very much indeed. Right, that's that one. And the date of next meeting, which seems a long way away. 13th of April, is that the right day?
Yeah, it is the right day, I think. Is that right, Martin?
I hadn't checked, to be honest, but I was just thinking, if we were able to go for the 20th, given that the way things are at the moment, by the 20th of April, there's a fair chance that I might have sort of provisional final figures for the end of the year by then.
20th is
So-
my planning at the moment.
The 13th might just be a little bit too soon to get the March figures completed, but given that I've done the December figures by about the 14th or 15th, may well have some meaningful figures by, you know, just before the 20th. So I don't know if that's a consideration.
Looks okay to me, I think.
Planning and finance on the same night, Colin?
If we focus finance meeting just on signing off the final figures, then it doesn't necessarily need to be a long meeting.
Does that sound all right to everyone? Looks like a few nods. Okay, so we'll do Tuesday the 20th of April. If you could note that for us, Alicia, if you update the old things for us. Right, finally, closure at 20:01. Thank you all.
Thank you.